Hi everybody, it's John back with another model inbox review. We're looking, of course, here at an image of the Queen Elizabeth II, the famous Cunard ocean liner. And this is actually an image, I believe, of the QE-2 on her maiden voyage out of Southampton in 1969, when she made her maiden transatlantic voyage. I want to give you a slight history lesson here, but it will be quite brief, so don't worry about it. It's not, but there are some interesting facts about this ship that I thought it would be worthy of note before we go into the inbox review itself. When the Queen Elizabeth II was launched, she was originally to be called by Cunard's, the owner of the ship, the Queen Elizabeth, and she was to act as a direct replacement for the original Queen Elizabeth ocean liner that sadly was sold off to a Japanese businessman and caught fire in 1971. But the Queen Elizabeth was supposed to have replaced that ship. But when the present monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, launched the ship on launch day, she actually said, "I name this ship Queen Elizabeth II." And Cunard actually had a lot of issues over this because they weren't sure if they were actually allowed to call the ship after a living monarch. But by 1969, when the ship was actually due to have a maiden voyage, she was commissioned into service by Queen Elizabeth II again, and she again called the ship the Queen Elizabeth II. So the ship was actually commissioned into Cunard's service as the QE-2, and not the original thought as the Queen Elizabeth. This is an image of the Queen Elizabeth II on her maiden voyage in 1969, sailing out of Southampton Harbour on her maiden transatlantic voyage to New York. The next image, this was 1969, but the next image, if I can get my mouse to work, for some reason it doesn't want to work. The next image is the QE-2 during a 1982 refit for the Falklands campaign. Saying refit, she was actually extensively converted into a troop ship, and the work didn't actually start until she set sail for the Falkland Islands initially. She actually had a helicopter deck fitted out on her stern and a helicopter deck fitted out on her forecastle here. And there are other crew quarters and hardened platforms here that were given position for other possible landing platforms for small helicopters. But they were also used for training, training courtyards, if you like, for the soldiers to do some basic training whilst setting sail. But I thought this was quite an interesting image for any of you guys out there that fancy building a QE-2, as she would have looked during the Falklands campaign in May 1982. And it just gives you a pretty good idea on what the ship would have looked like. So that was in May 1982 during the Falklands conflict. And then in 1983, when the ship came back from the Falklands campaign, she went into what was called a Modernization refit, and the ship was spruced up and given a new lease of life. She was given a red funnel to replace the white painted funnel. This was more in line with Cunard's colours for funnels, and the actual Cunard funnel was painted in an orangey red fire glow, and these two black stripes went across. These are actually called Cunard hands, just for interesting sake. But the ship was also given a light grey side hull painted scheme, which proved incredibly unpopular, not just with the passengers who sailed on the ship, but also with the maintenance crew found looking after the paintwork on the ship. When she went back into port, an awful lot more work than when she was just painted black. So that was the 1983 refit. And then in 1984, the ship was reverted back to her original colours with an extensive modernisation program, which cost I think it was about £117 million to renew her boilers paint her from stem to stern and fit her with new cabins and new pieces of equipment on the ship all over. And the ship retained her Cunard coloured funnel with the black stack and the red, if you like, the red hand, the Cunard hand around the ship. And it did look very, very nice indeed. That was 1984. Then in 1986, the ship went under an extensive modernisation programme. The ship had been in service for around about 16 years, and she was proving to be very, very expensive to operate as a cruise ship. And then she was actually taken to a place, I think it was Wolfenshafen in Germany, where the heart of the ship was ripped out. As you can see here, there's an image there of a massive hole in the top of the ship where the funnel would have been. In this picture, actually, I've seen other images of this picture, and the ship's brand new hull, brand new funnel stack, which was much larger than the previous stack, was actually sat on the side deck here, just out of shot. And the ship was refitted with diesel electric engines to make her much more fuel efficient and easier to maintain. And when the stack was fitted on the top of the ship, you'll see in a minute, this is during the 1986 refit. When the stack was fitted and she was fully operational in 1987, she actually looked like this, with a much larger Cunard style funnel, but the funnel itself was made much larger because the ship needed more. It needed this size funnel for the 4 diesel electric motors which powered the ship now, which incidentally proved to enable the ship to run 50% fuel efficient over what she was before. Anyway, what we'll do now is we'll have a quick look into this ship itself. It's actually the 1/600 scale Airfix Queen Elizabeth II, and this kit was originally released, believe it or not, in 1968, before the QE-2 actually sailed on her maiden voyage. So I'm guessing a little bit of this ship could possibly have been off artist impressions or photographs of the ship while she was being fitted out, if you like. So she might not be as accurate as, say, a more modern moulded kit of the QE-2. But the model was originally released on the Type 3 boxing, the famous red stripe boxing. Interestingly enough, these stripes weren't always red, but most were. And you had the Airfix scroll style logo on the box here, which is quite nice. And also I can see there are some other vessels here in 1/600 scale that Airfix sell. I think that is the SS France, that's HMS Devonshire, and this ship here is HMS Victorious. There would have been maybe 2 or 3 others on the other side, possibly 2 with an image of the ship on that side. But Airfix did this in the 60s and early 70s when they released the Type 3 and Type 4 boxings. They advertised an awful lot of their other kits on the sides of the box, which I think was a good idea. Anyway, you can see also that the plastic is moulded in white. Interesting that, because it wasn't always moulded in white, as you'll see in a minute. 1968 went through to 1972, and you had the Type 4 boxing. This is the first type of boxings that came up with the traditional Airfix logo, although it's not in white, black and red. Is in this scene, you can see in this picture here that it's definitely green, a sort of a sky sea blue and black logo, and the Queen Elizabeth II is in the same colour blue that's in the background of the Airfix logo section there. You can also see that there's an image of the SS France, there's an image of the Canberra on the side of this box, and an image of the Queen Elizabeth I, which was quite interesting. I've always liked the idea that they did this. And also, of course, you've got her in her original livery right up to 1972. Then in 1978, the ship was released in, I think it's a Type 6 box with a planetoid label. They grossly changed the actual outlook of the boxing. They used the same artwork, but they grossly changed the way in which the box was laid out with all the information on the top. And this planetoid label, I call it the planetoid because it's not actually a sphere, it's more of a planet-shaped logo, but it is the traditional red, white and black. On the sides of this box, I think it still had adverts for the other kits on the sides of the box, which is interesting. But you've got 1/600 scale model kit and then model réduit in French on the front of the kit box there. So that's 1978. Then in 1980, Airfix joined up with a company called Kiko, and I think Kiko sell kits either in Japan or the Far East. I'm not 100% sure. If any of you guys know, definitely you can pop it in the comments, because I've always wondered where Kiko actually sell their models to from Airfix. But it's the original artwork. Queen Elizabeth II, 1/600 scalers on the front here, and the Airfix logos on the right hand side instead of the left hand side. But it's the original artwork, and the shipping is her original 1969 guise. Then in 1990, we have a Photoshop and a complete change in format. This, of course, was under the ownership of Humbrol Group Marketing through Borden Incorporated, who still owned Airfix in 1990. And the thing about it is that the QE-2 now has a red funnel. She's got a Cunard coloured funnel, which of course she would have been at the present time when this box was marketed. But it's also moulded in grey plastic, which is a little unusual. And I think you'll find that this grey plastic was actually manufactured in India and not in France. A lot of Airfix kits were moulded in what I would call a very inferior style plastic, and they were usually in funny weird colours, but often grey, also a sort of a greeny grey or a slight sort of psychedelic blue. It's because the models were actually they were manufactured in India and then shipped across to Europe. But that was 1990, and that release from the Humbrol Group Marketing. Then in 1993, the kit was re-released again, but this time reverting back to the white funnel. It's still called the RMS Queen Elizabeth II. You still had Series 6 1/600 scale on the right hand side here, and the kit was still moulded in grey plastic. But the ship's artwork was reverted back to white, and I don't really understand the point of this, because the ship at that time was still definitely had a red funnel, albeit it would have been the diesel electric style funnel, and the funnel would have been much bigger. It's a shame actually that they didn't retool the kit and produce the larger funnel, because I actually think the QE-2 looked a little bit nicer with the new revised power plant and the new stack that she had. So that was 1993, and then in 1993 Airfix also linked up with a company called Lodella. I think Lodella sell kits in Spanish-speaking countries in Central and South America. And this kit is obviously no exception. Anyway, you're reverting back to the original artwork from the original release back in 1968. But it has a nice red border around the outside of the artwork, which is quite nice. This box is actually white. It's not sort of a light browny cream colour. It's actually white, just like most of the others. So that was 1993, Airfix Lodella's release of the QE-2. And then in 2002, you have the last release, which is actually the boxing format that I've got this kit in. And this was released under the ownership of Maguire and McGuinness in 2002, just prior to the Hornby Hobbies Productions Limited takeover of Airfix in 2006. The interesting thing about this kit is they're actually classifying it as a skill level 3 model. It could be, actually. I remember building this kit when I was a kid, and I did find it a bit of a tricky build to get all the decks into the right place, but I'm hoping it's not going to give me that much of a problem now. But that's the last release of the model in 2002. Lastly, I want to show you an image of what the QE-2 looks like now. This is actually not a photograph, but it's a model, or if you like, an artist impression model of how the ship would have looked like, and certainly does look like now. Because in 2018 there was a grand opening of the new QE-2 floating hotel in Dubai, and you can actually go and stay on the QE-2. She's one of the most luxurious hotels in Dubai, and Dubai is the home of luxurious hotels. And the QE-2 is moored up permanently as a floating hotel, and she's a wonderful, wonderful exhibit. But you can see there the larger funnel that she received when she had the turbo diesel electric modernisation program applied to her back in 1987. So anyway, what I'll do now is I'll just pan the camera down very quickly to this model, and it's not going to take a huge amount of time because although this kit is actually quite big, there's not a lot of sprues in here. On the sides of the box you've got a nice image there with the serial number 06203, skill level 3, 1/600 scale. On this side you've got some stats, like general instructions here. It's not stats, the stats are on the plans. You've got Humbrol colour callouts and suggestions for glue and paint, dimensions of the kit, and yeah, you know what that is. And on the end you've got a repeat of the other side, very easy indeed, and then you've got like a brief outlay of what the ship is. It's the latest Cunard liner. She's not the latest Cunard liner now, there's obviously quite a few more. So what we'll do, we'll just open the box. There's not a huge amount to go through in here, but we'll just open the box. Actually, what I'll do, I'll just get the stuff out that I need to get out, and then I'll take the two main hull panels and all but one of the sprues, because I can put the other sprues back on top of it in a minute. I want to talk about the sprues because the sprues are interesting. The plastic on this kit is a little bit interesting. There is actually a decal sheet, which is interesting too. I didn't realise there was, but of course there's a decal sheet. Right, in this kit you have a flash service sheet. I don't know if you've seen any of these older flash service sheets, but these are the ones that were issued under McGuinness and Maguire ownership in the late 90s, early 2000s. And you've got an address there of Humbrol Airfix Flash Service, Marfleet in Hull. Don't have to worry about that too much. And then you've got the decals. Now I just want to show you, actually we'll have a look at the decals in a minute. Let's just have a look at the instructions, because the instructions are quite interesting. The kit itself builds up in 6 stages with a separate colour paint plan. And one of the things about the more modern boxings is that they actually want you to build the kit in a totally different order to which you built it when it was originally released in 1968. And you can always tell that from the part numbers. The part numbers here start at about part number 9, sorry, here at the bottom. And this is the midships and bridge deck. But in actual fact, I will be building this kit in numerical order, the same as I originally built this kit when I was a teenager, by adhering the hull halves together and all the decks fore and aft. And then I'll be building this section after I've built this section here. So I'll be starting with section 4, omitting this part out and these parts here, and then building section 1. But basically section one for me would be the hull and like foredeck and the stern decks and poop decks and all the rest of it, and then I would build the midship and bridge decks. There's quite a lot of parts to these different decks, and they seem to be quite detailed. And then in section, well, I would probably go with this section next, which is the build of all the lifeboats, the davits. It's given you clear colour callouts there for the different boats, which is nice. There's quite a lot of davits here, which is interesting. Yeah, I quite like the look of those. They look quite good. Not sure where these go. It'll be quite interesting to see where these are supposed to go. Oh, they actually show you where they're supposed to go. Look, they go across the top of there, so they link up at the back on the back hoist, which is quite nice. Yeah, and then you've got the foremast, radar assembly, and the stack. This is the old style stack you get in this kit, of course. There's a radar section part 120 which goes on there. And then at the back here in section 6, you're putting the propeller assembly, rudder, all the anchors in place, and the stands. And these things here, these are quite an interesting feature, these 4 parts, 127 to 130, because these are actually the stabilising hydrofoils. These actually were computer controlled according to the ship's, if you like, attitude in the water when she was sailing. And it did alleviate an awful lot of the wave effects on the ship's hull while she was sailing. Obviously in bad weather or like severe swells, they wouldn't have worked as well, but they certainly did work in mild swells and keeping the ship's attitude in the water relatively level. On the main exterior part of the plans, you've got the Queen Elizabeth II section. This is an A4 sheet. You've got the logo here, 1/600 scale model construction kit and the serial number. And then you've got lots of stats and details and history of the ship here. And it's in 5 different languages. I think that's French, German, Spanish and Swedish. And on the inside of this sheet, you've got general instructions here in lots of different languages, and assembly icon instructions. These are the keys that tell you what to do, when to do it and everything. Yeah, quite easy to follow. And then on the back of here, you've got the colour call out for the ship. And you can see it's going to be quite a colourful kit when it's finished. I'm going to refer a lot to some of the photographs I've got of the ship's decking to see what colours to paint the ship's decking, because I'm not sure if they're supposed to be those colours. The other thing I'm interested in looking at is whether those, I seem to remember there was 2 transparent parts on this kit, but I don't think they are. I think no, they're not. They're just embossed into parts 6 and 7, which is the rear deck. I thought there might have been swimming pool covers or something, but they're not. So anyway, that's the instructions. We'll just pop that underneath. Quite easy to follow. We'll have a look at the decals now. The decals are quite nice. Got the Cunard symbol there, which is quite easy, and you've got lots and lots of tennis court markings. And I'm just going to quickly read these to see what they are. Try and have the glasses to see if I can figure out what these say, because it would be interesting. I don't think the camera's going to pick them up. But they are, oh actually they look like some sort of games court, which are embossed on the deck of the ship. And then you've got the Queen Elizabeth II written there. Tennis courts, quite nice. They're not too raised either. The register on them is very good, although that Queen Elizabeth II could have been written a little bit better than that. But you know, it's a small scale kit, isn't it? So you know, I wouldn't expect too much in terms of quality of decals. Anyway, the first sprue, and there's one thing I want to say about the plastic parts on this kit, is that they appear to be, they're not Airfix's of general run-of-the-mill plastic that I would normally assume ocean liner kits, and I've built a number of ocean liners in the past, that ocean liner kits would be normally made from. These parts seem to be quite stiff and brittle, so I'm going to have to take care when removing these from the sprues. But the parts, they're quite crisp. There's not a huge amount of flash on these parts, although on the stands there you can see that there is generally. But the actual other parts of the vessel, there doesn't seem to be a lot of flash on them, which is quite nice. There's quite a lot of detail here, and little windows and portholes. I'm hoping the camera's going to pick that out. Yeah, it is getting there. There you go. And there's lots of slots and bits and pieces there. The detail on this kit looks quite nice, and I think it will pick out really nicely. The top deck there's not a lot to write home about, but you can definitely see some planking effects on that part there at the back, and it seems to be quite nicely portrayed. It's rendered quite nicely. The second sprue is predominantly lifeboats and davits. The actual moulding of the lifeboats is quite nice. I think they'll paint up quite nicely. We've got 2 sections here to the outer forward section of the hull, where the forward section of the deck goes, around the bridge and that, you know, quite nice. And then all the davits, they're quite nicely crafted. There's no flash on this sprue whatsoever. Actually, there is a couple of lifeboats that have a little tiny bit of flash on them, but can you see the detail on the side of the hulls there? It's almost like they've put the little ringlets of the little ropes on the side of the launchers there, which is quite nice. You've got another sprue here which incorporates several deck parts. You've got the forward radar mast there, the communications antenna, and you've also got the decking effects on the ship's decks, the planking effect rather, which is quite nice. It's the forecastle, forward section of the deck. Not a huge amount of detail on there, but then I suppose really all you'd have is the anchor chains and everything. That's the ship's funnel stack mount, and what I call the extending wings above the ship's bridge, and there's a ship's bridge with the detail on it. It's quite nice. It is, you know, it is quite nice. The propellers look a bit, they need a little bit of cleaning up, I think. And they're just, this sprue seems to have like a little tiny bit of flash around the outside of some of the parts, but it's nothing to worry about really. You know, it's not an issue, I don't think. For me, I don't think I'm going to have an issue with that. You've got another part here which has quite a bit of decking, planking effects on the deck there. I'm not sure how much of that you're going to see, but yeah, it's quite a nice crafted piece. The stairs, the curved stairs on the back of there, that's quite a nice touch. I like that. Yeah, so that's looking good. Then you've got this part here, which most of the davits fit onto. This is obviously the boat deck. Quite nice. It's got some planking effects there on the ship as well, and there's quite a bit of wood planking effect there. That's quite nice. It would be quite nice if I could get a wash on those and maybe bring them out a little bit, give them a bit of definition. Yeah, it would be quite nice. I'm not going to show you both of these hulls because you only really need to see one of them. I do want to show you this hull though, because this hull is actually, I think when this is painted up, it's going to look beautiful. First and foremost, I want to show you these two holes here. These are two like embossed sections of the ship below the hull. These are actually the ports used to help guide the ship in turnarounds in the river, in the Southampton River, and obviously in the Hudson River in New York and the River Itchen in Southampton, and that they would force water jets from the main turbines to help turn the ship around from the bows, and a tug would usually guide the ship's stern to make sure that it didn't run out of control. There's quite a bit of detail in this ship's hull. I'm hoping this camera's going to pick it out. It is actually, that's lovely. Quite a lot of portholes, quite a lot of windows there. You're going to have some fun with that with a paintbrush, or you know, whatever you use to paint those features up in. The kit itself is quite big. You can see the kit is quite big. I mean, you know, there's my hand up against, you can see it. It's quite a big kit. It's nearly 2 foot long. It's, you know, it's a sizable ship. So that's basically the parts. We'll just put the lid on here so you've got something nice to look at. And then I'll go through the gump to close this video off. It shouldn't take very long. Right. The model we're doing an inbox review on is the Airfix RMS Queen Elizabeth II. Its serial number is 06203, so it's released in Series 6. Original release date was 1968, and the kit's moulded in 1/600th scale. There are decals in the ship, which are for the ship as she entered Cunard service in 1969. There are 145 parts on 7 white plastic sprues, and the dimensions of the kit are 19 inches long by 2¼ inches in her beam, and 4½ inches high on its stands. Now the options and costs, I've actually included all of the options available on this kit because there aren't that many, and what is out there is actually quite interesting. In 1/1200th scale, although really this particular kit is 1/1250th scale, there's a white metal model of the QE-2 produced by a company called Hansa. They're quite rare. There isn't an awful lot of them on the market at the moment, but there is one that didn't sell on eBay about a month ago, and it was around about $63.99, I believe. It didn't sell, so at the moment the kit, I'm putting a price on the model of £60 to £65, but be aware that this model is a white metal kit and it's not for an experienced builder. Revell also released a couple of kits in 1/1200 scale. The QE2 on her own in the box retails for anything from as little as £1 up to about £18 on the retail markets, online and in the shops, and it's quite easily available nowadays. But Revell also released a combi kit of the QE2 with the Queen Mary II, and that kit retails for anything from £16 to £20. In 1/600 scale, obviously you have the Airfix models, the QE2 Airfix standalone kit. I've seen it sell for as cheap as £5, and some of the earlier boxings in really good condition have sold for £100. Airfix also released the kit through Kiko and Lodella. I've seen both these models sell for anything between £25 and £80 each, and they are of course the reboxed Airfix kits. In 1/450th scale there are a couple of companies. AFV Club do a QE2, no pricing's available on that, but I've heard it's quite nice. And Otaki do quite a nice model of the QE2 as well, again no pricings on that. Anmark reboxed the Otaki kit of the QE2, again no pricings on that. And Gunzai Sanyo also released the QE2, which was a reboxed Otaki kit, and that kit has sold for between £90 and £110 in the last 2 or 3 months. Revell also reboxed the Otaki kit of the QE2, and that sells for between £60 and £80. Right, conclusions. This is a fairly big kit and it will require a large space to display it. It has some nice detail and the portholes and windows are faithfully rendered. The launches and the propellers look nicely crafted too. But there appears to be a lot of flash on this kit which will need some attention and cleaning up here and there. This particular model that I've got doesn't seem to suffer hugely, but as I said, there is some flash here and there that does need some attention. The plastic in this kit is moulded. The plastic that this kit is moulded from seems to be a little bit on the brittle side, and it's almost as if it's made in the period when Airfix kits were produced in India. I have built this kit before when I was a teenager, and I remember it was a handful at that age, but it did go together fair enough. Models worthy of note are the AFV Club kit, which apparently is fantastic. The Airfix kits aren't that bad and they seem to get quite good fair reviews from the pro builders. The Revell kit seems to be a fun build kit too to put together, and the Hansa kit is white metal and would be a more trickier build, though apparently it's not that bad for a small scale kit. The Revell model, if you can get it really cheap, isn't a bad option either, but I think the Revell model is of the earlier funnel stack pre the German refit in the mid to late 80s. The same as the Airfix kit is. Anyway, that's the inbox review for the Airfix QE2. I hope this video has been of some use. If you have any queries, questions, anything, just pop them in the comments boxes and I'll try and get back to you as quickly as possible if there's anything needs some answers on. Thanks for tuning in. I hope all your modelling subjects are running really well and you're having fun with your projects. Let's have some fun out there and stay safe. It's dangerous times outside, and I'll catch you for the next one. Bye bye for now.